Okay, so we're going to look at how to create a color accent in Photoshop, such as in this photo I took here on our last photo walk. We went to the PAC lobby, and there were some poster boards with images from past plays, and I noticed that this play had a lot of red items in the clothing. So we have like some red jackets and red shirts and red scarves. So I'm going to show you some different ways to accent just the red in your photographs. So go ahead and open a photo and follow along with me if you can. If Photoshop is not working for whatever reason, you can use Photopea and do it the same way. So we're going to look at 4 different methods for creating color accent. And this is what?
How do I get in the Photopea?
It's just a website, photopea.com. Okay, so Photoshop is the preferred method though. This is a lot more robust and it tends to not be as glitchy as Photopea. But there's a lot more you can do with Photoshop. Usually there's 2 or 3 ways to do anything in the Photoshop workspace. So the first thing I always like to do, what do I like to do first in Photoshop? Copy the background. So if you have not already, go ahead and just always start by making a copy of the background layer. Why do I do that? In case I mess up or do some irreversible damage, I can always go and make another copy of the background. So no worries, let's just make a copy. I drag it down from the layers panel down to the little plus sign next to the trash to make a copy. You could also right click and hit duplicate layer, or you can click on the 3 little lines at the top of the layers panel, which is the menu, and there's a duplicate layer option there. So again, 2 or 3 ways to do anything in Photoshop. So somehow make a duplicate of that layer. So the first and most obvious way of how to make a color accent or make one area stand out in color while the rest is black and white is just to select it and copy and paste it onto a new layer. So the tool that works best for selecting based on color is the Magic Wand tool. So if you look down on the toolbar, about 4 tools down, it's the quick selection tools. We have the object select, the quick selection, and then the Magic Wand. So the Magic Wand selects based on color. So you'll notice that if I zoom in here on like this top area and I just click, I don't have contiguous turned on, so let's try it with contiguous turned on the options bar. When I click, it's just going to select all of the pixels that are within 50 points of that color red that I clicked on. So it's kind of like a medium tolerance. Now, if I increase that tolerance to 100 and tried clicking, now it's going to click on all the pixels that are touching that area that are within 100, levels of that color. So if I did 32 as my tolerance instead, then it's going to be a much less, a smaller range of colors. So I'm going to put it on 50 because I think that one was the best. And then I'm just going to click on that area. Command D. Click on just a red. There it goes. Okay, so if I took off contiguous, so if I check that little box or uncheck it, then it's going to select all the pixels in the entire document that are that shade of red or similar to that shade of red. So now I have like parts of his face down here, so a lot more than what I want. But I can go and subtract from the selection now using any of the selection tools and this options bar where it says subtract from selection up here where my mouse is jumping. Okay, so now I can just use the lasso tool and just kind of circle, like I don't want this area here. I don't want his face. So I'm deselecting areas. I could even use this rectangular marquee tool. As long as I have subtract from selection, I can just say I don't want that area. I don't want this entire side. And I can just highlight this outfit and that outfit. Okay, so now that I only have those 2 pieces of clothing selected, how do I copy and paste it to a new layer? I could use a key command, or I can go up to the edit menu, go down to copy, and then how do I paste? It's not Command P, what is it? Command V, or you can go up to edit paste. All right, so what that did, I know you can't see it, but if I hide my other layers, basically it just put those two outfits on their own layer. So I'll rename layer 1 and just call it red. Oops. Okay, so now with my background copy selected, I'm going to add a black and white adjustment layer. If your adjustments are not open, you can find them by going to Window, Adjustments. And then I like seeing them in the classic view. The modern view to me is just like too much. So I like the classic view because then everything is all condensed right here. So right in the middle, it looks like a black and a white rectangle. That's your black and white adjustment layer. So now it added it right here in the middle in between those two layers, and it's going to make everything underneath of it black and white. And this is why I say to take pictures in color first and then make them black and white, because now you have all of these options with your color sliders where you could like make the reds brighter, you can make the blues darker to increase the contrast in your image. Now if you just took a black and white photo with the camera on like monochrome setting, you can do that. You just don't have all of this information to use later when you're trying to edit in Photoshop. There's just a lot more you can do if you have the color data saved as well with that file. So that's why I'd suggest making your screenshot black and white after the fact instead of trying to take each photo black and white first. Does that kind of make sense? Maybe. Okay, so that's method number 1. For adding a color accent is just selecting with the magic wand tool, copy and pasting. Now you could also use the object select tool. I know some people were trying to make like just the red car. There was like a car in the parking lot that was red. They were trying to highlight that car. The object select tool would do a pretty good job for that object because it's all very simple. It's like one simple color versus clothing is a little bit more complicated. Okay, so that's number 1. Another technique that you could use in order to create a color accent, if I delete these layers here. So here I'm back to my background copy. I'm going to use the hue saturation adjustment layer. And this is kind of cool. So look up here, even if you don't think you're going to do a color accent, just look up here to kind of see what this tool will do. So if I add hue saturation, normally what it does is if I change the hue, it changes the hue of every color underneath of it. So it's creating sort of like this strange alien effect. I don't want that, obviously. So what I can do is change it from master to maybe reds. And then notice that now when I'm changing the hue, I'm only adjusting the shade of those reds. Okay, so I can make my reds stand out. Now, if I wanted to lower the saturation of, say, the blues, maybe I just slide this over here to the blues. And then lower where it says saturation. So now it's made everything else, or all the blues, black and white, and then just the reds and the yellows are displaying. So I can add another one of those. So if I click it again, now I have a second hue saturation adjustment layer. Here I could do the same thing, but this time maybe with yellow. Okay, and then I might expand that to like accept all the greens as well. And then lower the saturation of my yellows. So now the only thing that I have in color are the reds. So that would be another way to create a color accent. So that's method number 2. And then a third way would probably be the easiest way. I'm going to use Camera Raw. So now I'm using this background copy because this is a destructive edit. So what do I mean by destructive? What does it do to the layer? Yeah, it's a permanent change to that layer, so you can't just hit Command Z and go back in time. And you can, but if you've done like 10 steps since then, you can't just go and take, this effect off. All right. Guys, Okay, so again, this is the easiest way to create a color accent. So I suggest you look up here, even if you've already started and you're using one of the other methods. This one might be the best method for you. So under the filter menu, again, filters are destructive. So that means they make a permanent change to your layer. So that's why I'm working on my background copy. And then I'm going to go down to Camera Raw. Don't click the top Camera Raw. That's just like the shortcut to the last thing you did in Camera Raw. You don't want to use that because each time you use it, you're going to try and do new things. So go to the actual Camera Raw filter. Some people mess up on that. So Camera Raw filter, and this is something that I like to have students start out with no matter what you're trying to do in Photoshop, especially if you don't know what to do. It's a great idea just to start here because you have everything all over here off to the right. You have all of these different settings. Basic, temperature, white balance, exposure, highlight, shadows. You can do everything just right here on this menu. So it's a lot easier to see what some of your options are rather than being overwhelmed by like all the things you can do in Photoshop. So Camera Raw is a really nice, simple way to get started on your image. So if you go to the color mixer portion, it will allow you to lower the saturation of certain colors. So if I just avoid the red, and lower the saturation of everything else, the aquas and the blues and the purples and the magentas. Now you see all I'm left with are the reds, and I can increase the saturation on those reds or the luminance, make them stand out. I can change the hue to make it more purple or more orangey. And then click OK, and there is my color accent using the Camera Raw filter. Okay, finally, and that was a destructive edit, so now I have to delete my background copy and make another copy of my background to show you my fourth and final method that I'm going to display for creating a color accent. And this is to do so with a custom brush that desaturates or lowers the color in your document. So for this, I'm just going to zoom in on this one image right here in the corner. And I want this actor to be in color, and I want his friend to be black and white, so it kind of looks like he's a ghost or something. And then this is the only thing that's accented. So in order to do that, I'm on my background copy, and I'm going to grab the sponge tool. So this is hidden underneath the dodge and burn. Dodge looks like a lollipop, and that's for lightening certain areas of your photo. The burn looks like a hand, and that's for darkening certain areas. And then the sponge is for desaturating. So it's almost like it's sucking the color out of your photo. So whenever you click and drag, whoops, I have to make sure it's on desaturate. So on desaturate, you click and drag, and notice how it gets rid of your color. I put the flow on 100 so that every time I clicked, it got rid of all the color. So here's his friend is now a ghost. I'm just kind of dragging around him, taking the color out of the background, out of this guy's boots down here, out of this blue cooler. It's now a black and white cooler. Okay. So there we go. I'm adding a custom black and white effect to just certain areas in my document with the sponge tool. Now, if you want to saturate an area or make the colors more saturated, I can change this from desaturate to saturate. Maybe I lower the flow to like 50% or something. And now, wherever I click, notice what it's doing to his shirt. It's increasing the saturation of those colors so they become brighter and more intense. Yeah. Okay, so that is using the sponge tool to desaturate or saturate according to how much of a color accent you want. Are there any questions about adding a color accent to your images? I did want to show you one other little trick. I took this picture in the art gallery, and I thought that the little teapot looked like he would be holding something. So I'm going to show you how to composite one image into another. But both images have to be taken by you. So you can't just go online and find a picture of a zebra or something that you obviously didn't take yourself, or the Eiffel Tower. It has to be a picture that you've taken. So I'm going to add maybe one of these characters here from this poster. So I'm going to add this guy And I'm going to select him using the quick selection tool because the object select does not let me click on him. Oops. See, it clicked on the whole picture for some reason. So I'm just going to use the quick selection tool. And this allows me to paint my selection kind of like as if I have a paintbrush and it's trying to find that edge of contrast everywhere that I click. Oops, and I selected too much. So what you can do is either hold down the Option key and subtract from your selection, or you can change your cursor from add to selection to subtract from selection up here at the top on the options bar. Remember, the options bar changes depending on which tool you have. And then this works with a brush. So you can make your brush bigger or smaller right here, adjusting the size, or you can hit the right or left bracket keys as your keyboard shortcut to make the brush smaller or bigger. Again, 2 or 3 ways to do anything in Photoshop. The more you know, the more that you'll be able to ask me later, like, how'd you do that one thing again? So feel free to just watch, even if you're not working alongside me, just because at least then in the future you'll kind of know it's possible. Okay, so Option, subtract from selection. I like to take a peek at what my selection looks like by clicking on Select and Mask up here on the options bar. So now it shows me, oh, I'm missing part of his scarf. I like to view it on Overlay, which is the red option, because then I can really get a good clear view of that edge. Okay, and then I click OK. I see I was missing a tip of his shoe, and maybe I don't want this part right here. Oops. Okay, it's good enough for now. I might add this little scarf piece right here. Okay, and if you're really getting nitpicky and it's giving you trouble, you can also like hand draw part of your selection. So I can add to this selection with the lasso tool. So I'm going to choose add to selection, and then I might say, oh, I just want this little part right there. So that's a really easy way to go in and add to your selection if your quick selection tool is not doing the job. Okay, so now I'm going to copy and paste. So copy him from this image, edit copy. And this is just something above and beyond if you want to composite or like put images together. This is one way to do it. So I can copy him. I can go to my teapot. I want him to be holding this little person. So edit paste. And then let's put him in his hand. He looks like he should be a little bigger, so I'll do Command T to make him a little bit bigger. And then he looks like he should be facing this direction to be looking down at the monster. So I'm going to go to Edit Transform, and then at the bottom I'm going to choose Flip Horizontal. So we'll flip him on the horizontal axis there. Okay. Now if I'm trying to maybe like darken just this layer, so it looks like my little person could probably get a little bit darker values to look like he blends in better. So if I hit the brightness contrast adjustment layer, notice it affects every layer beneath it, right? So see where it is in the layers panel? It's at the top and it's affecting all layers beneath it. But if I click this little clip to button at the bottom, then suddenly it's only affecting the image of the person. So now it's only affecting the one layer beneath it. So that can be helpful for you when you're trying to edit composite images and working with different layers. Okay, now finally, if I want to change the white balance on this, notice how the whites in this picture look kind of yellow. That might matter in your black and white pictures. So yeah. I could either make it black and white and select the red guy and put him on his own layer, or I could just open the Camera Raw filter and change the white balance. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to make a copy of my background layer. So click on it, drag it down to that plus sign. So I always start with a copy of my background. And then I'm going to go to Filter, Camera Raw. And then over here, I'm going to add, under where it says Basic, I'm going to change the white balance to Auto. And there it did a pretty good job making the whites look white in the document. Okay, so what questions do you have about creating a color accent, highlighting certain areas of the image, custom making it black and white? adding a black and white layer, using the adjustment layers. Oops, I just made him black and white because he was the only thing selected. But if I just add a basic black and white adjustment layer, it'll make everything black and white. Okay. Again, to make your screenshot black and white, you would just take a screenshot of all of your images in Google Drive. So if I want all 100 to show, I hit Command- a couple of times until all of them are showing. Then I hit Command-Shift-4, drag a screenshot around them, and then I open that screenshot in Photoshop. So it's going to be saved to my desktop. So File, Open. Here's the screenshot. And then how do I make this black and white? Who was paying attention? What's one way to make something black and white? Okay, so I could just go to hue saturation and lower the saturation all the way. Perfect. What's another way to make something black and white? Again, there's 2 or 3 ways to do anything in Photoshop. Okay, very good. So filter, camera raw, and I can change it to black and white with that button right there. Very good. What's another way? What's one more way to make something black and white? And this is so that you don't have to take all your pictures and open them individually in Photoshop and make them all black and white and re-upload them. That's way too much work. This is just making your one screenshot black and white. So it looks like you took 100 black and white photos. All right, we're going to click on this little button right here on the adjustment layers, and that's the third way that I'm going to show you of how to make your screenshot black and white. Okay, any questions about the black and white unit? So it'll be due, I believe, on March 7th. Let me double check that. March 6th. So that's the RAM day. Okay, so it's due on March 6th. That's 5 black and white photos edited in Photoshop. One or two could be color accent photos if you want to use something you've taken today or outside of school. And then your screenshot of 100 needs to be black and white as well. Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you guys.